Alabama head coach Kalen DeBoer has a lot to prove this season. He's won everywhere he's gone, but Alabama has high expectations. They've been the premier program throughout most of college football's history. Now, I'm not here to give you a history lesson on Alabama football, but I am here to give you a lesson on who Kalen DeBoer is and how he's consistently found success both offensively and defensively through his scheme. Now, before we get into the film, I have to make a couple of prefaces. One, I mostly looked at Washington's offense in 2023. That's for a couple of reasons. One, their offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb is returning after a year with the Seahawks, and so I think the offense is going to resemble more that 2023 team than the team last year. Second, Ty Simpson, their starting quarterback, I think resembles Michael Penix more than Jalen Milroe. So I think it's a better comparison both schematically and personnel-wise. So let's go ahead and jump straight into the film. In all honesty, Kalen DeBoer's offense is very difficult to scout, and that's because they run a lot of different formations. I would describe them as an extremely multiple offense. That means they're going to throw a lot of formations, a lot of motions, lots of plays at you. No two plays look the same in any one game, and so that makes it a very difficult scout. However, no offense is made perfect, and there are some downsides to this approach. You start to see some motifs. Some formations can become tells over time as you see similar plays being run out of the same formation over and over. Alabama mixes up their run game fairly heavily. They run some inside zones, some outside zones, some counter, some power, some sweeps, but you start to see some trends. Particularly, probably their most common formation and their kind of base formation would be this nub to the boundary. By nub, I mean that there's just a tight end to the short side of the field. And why they might use this is it forces the corner into the run fit. That allows the offense to get a big tight end one-on-one with the cornerback out in space, and allows them to take advantage of that size mismatch. If safeties or other defenders start creeping over towards that nub end, it gives potential one-on-ones on the other side of the field. Now, a common theme I saw when I was watching through a lot of their games is they love to play games with this boundary. In college football, the hash marks are wider than you would see in the NFL, and because of that, you get a really dramatically short side of the field and a really dramatically wide side of the field. Now, most people would almost always put their strength to the wide side of the field. You put more players where there's more space, but you'll very frequently see them put their formation into the boundary. This does a couple of things for them. This can simply mean that they have more space for their dynamic receivers like Ryan Williams to win one-on-ones out in space. But it also allows them to run sweeps and different things using a heavier personnel set in a short side of the field where defense might be more likely to put some of their weaker players since most teams aren't trying to run into that short side of the field. Outside of these kind of games that they play with the boundary, you see a bunch of different kind of bunch sets and different looks that are supposed to confuse the defense and give kind of an exotic feel to this offense. Now, on top of all of this formational diversity, you also see them tack on a ton of motions. They're pretty consistently towards the top in the country in motion rate usage. And a lot of the motions that they use are what I'll call throw motions. So they're motions where a wide receiver will take a few steps before he gets into a route, or maybe a tight end will take a few steps into the box before he blocks. It is trying to give leverage and get a good head start into the route for their wide receivers. So the question is, they're getting these throw motions to get some momentum into the routes. What are these routes that they run? What are some common passing concepts that you might see out of Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer's offense? To me, their passing game is actually kind of unique, but it has a lot of base in the air raid game. And one of the reasons that I say that is because probably the most common passing concept that you'll see them run is some variation of just 4 verticals. They're going to send their receivers deep and they're going to try to push the ball downfield. Now, what makes them particularly adept at running 4 verticals is that their receivers are coached up really well to settle in space. So oftentimes you'll see them try to release downfield and get capped hard by a defender, and you'll see them kind of work back to the ball and give an easy completion to their quarterback 15-20 yards downfield. You'll see in my picture that there's often an option for these wide receivers to kind of sit down off of these vertical routes. Another variation of 4 verticals that they run often, and probably their most frequently run passing concept, is what I call switch. And it's just 4 verticals, but the receivers switch off of the line of scrimmage. They'll commonly run this out of empty sets, but they don't necessarily have to. But if they're in an empty set, they're probably going to be running switch. The only other thing I ever saw them run out of an empty set was this kind of spacing concept, which is supposed to take advantage of defenders just kind of dropping back and expecting the vertical switch and really just give easy completions underneath. This play's actually technically not spacing. It's a slot fade, and they will throw the fade every so often, but really they're just trying to hit those underneath routes for consistent gain. This is their go-to quick hitter, but you'll see pretty consistently if there's an underneath route in any of these route combinations, at least Michael Penix was very quick to hit them and take the easy yards. Now, spacing concepts and four verts are two of the most common passing concepts in all of football. They do run some other things. Most commonly, they run kind of a smash concept, and really it's just an outside hitting high-low read. So you'll see in this picture that I have drawn here, a little 1 and a little 2. That means usually the quarterback's looking deep to in. He's looking to hit that deep corner route and then move down to that quick out. But like I said earlier, if that quick out presents itself open early, he will hit it. So usually this is a high-low read on a corner. If the corner drops, you're going to hit the underneath route. If the corner stays up, you take a shot on the corner. Now they have a couple of different variants of this. They have two-man smash where you don't have that third underneath post route. And you'll also see them running cross smash, which essentially is the same route combination where you have the underneath out on the strong side of the field. And then instead of a corner route from the same side of the field, you see a crosser taking his role, usually from a condensed slot position on the other side of the field. So this kind of high-low read, whether it's smash, whether it's cross, whether it's any of those, is very common motif in their passing game. They're always kind of looking to stretch that defense vertically using this concept. On top of all this, you'll see them pretty frequently run mesh. Usually this is in short yardage situations or requires them to use a condensed set. So if you see wide receivers kind of packing their way inside, that's a good tell that you might be looking out for mesh. They're pretty good at running it, at least they were in 2023. And when you zoom out and look at all of these passing concepts as a whole, this really does scream air raid to me. You have four verticals, you have kind of quick stick spacing concepts, smash, mesh. These are staples of an air raid offense. And with Michael Penix in 2023, they threw the ball as well as anybody. This offense has a good mix of horizontal stretches with four verticals and spacing concepts where defenses have to cover the whole horizontal width of the field, and some vertical stretching concept using smash and cross. On top of all of this, they'll throw in some jailbreak and running back screens pretty often, and they also often tag screens off of RPO. They run a fair amount of screens. About 18% of their passing concepts in 2023 were off of screens, and they're fairly good at it. Overall, I really like this offense. It's really tough to kind of get a feel for what they want to do. They throw so much at you. They throw so many motions, so many formations that it's really tough to scout. However, I do think there are some potential drawbacks just like anything. Both Oklahoma last year and Arizona State the year before that were able to kind of limit this offense by forcing them to take those underneath routes, by taking away the deeper routes and rallying towards the short routes, and really limiting their average air yards per attempt. If you want to try to beat this offense, you have to force them to tick and tack their way down the field and not make any mistakes. With Alabama's wide receiver core, if you allow them to take those shots deep consistently, I think they'll get them, and I think they'll find a lot of success. So that's Kalen DeBoer's offense. That's how I would see it and how I would try to defend it. Now, how about Alabama's defense? Defensively, I like to split up Alabama's looks into first and second down looks and third down looks. They look like a completely different defense in these two scenarios. So in first and second downs, they'll look kind of vanilla. You'll either see them in this 3 down lineman, odd, tight front, or you'll see them in this even front. And they're about a 50-50 ratio of both. There doesn't seem to be any kind of rhyme or reason when they go to tight front or when they go to even front. But realistically, these fronts are actually more similar to each other than you might think. Let me show you this clip that illustrates them shifting from their base even front to their base odd front. Realistically, all that's happening is that this defensive tackle and this linebacker are kind of switching assignments and switching gaps. This adds complexity to the offensive line, who has to determine now who to block after this shift, but it doesn't really add much complexity to the defense as they're just merely shifting a gap. Behind the front, they don't run a ton of different coverages. Really, what you're going to see most often is them starting with 2 safeties back, and then they'll rotate 1 safety down and run 1 safety back and run almost exclusively 1 high coverages. But to be honest, sometimes they don't even do this. They'll often just keep 1 safety back and just stick in that 1 high coverage the entire time. Over 70% of their defensive plays on first and second down are either spot drop cover 3, where you see 3 deep safeties. So there's 1 safety in the middle of the field and either a corner or another safety back with them. And the rest of the defenders just find an area in the field to drop to. Or you see the other 1 high coverage, which is man free, where each defender finds a man and locks him down with 1 deep safety behind them. But ultimately, you're going to almost exclusively see them run middle of the field close or 1 high safety looks on first and second down. All of this is to kind of give the illusion of variety. By rolling these safeties down late, by kind of making these pre-snap shifts between tight front and even front, they're giving the offense things to think about while keeping things simple for the defenders. They basically have the same roles. It's just 1 shift or the other shift pre-snap to kind of vary up their looks. But really, you're going to see the same coverages. You're going to see the same fronts over and over again. They don't tend to blitz a ton. They just sit in these kind of base looks that are pretty basic. I like this for Alabama's personnel. They have a ton of talent on defense, and if you can keep things pretty simple for them, they showed last year that they were able to just pin their ears back and play very effectively on these first and second downs. However, what they're best at isn't first and second down. What they're best at is third down. Third down is where they come into their own. You're going to see them mug a ton of linebackers. That means they bring up linebackers up. They bring up safeties up to the line of scrimmage. They're giving the offensive line things to chew on, things to look at. Usually this forces offensive line into man blocking, where they each choose a man because each person is occupying a gap. And then behind those mug looks, they can mix up the coverages. So here it looks like everybody's blitzing, and lo and behold, everybody does blitz and someone gets through free. Here in a similar play in the same game, it looks like everybody's blitzing, but then people drop back and it throws different looks at the quarterback and really keeps them on their toes. Behind these different looks, they mix up their coverages more than they do on first and second down. You see closer to 50 to 55% of single high coverages versus the 70+% we saw on first and second downs. It really makes quarterbacks uncomfortable in the most important down of football. This is also a good place to note that as the season progressed, this difference between first and second downs and third downs kind of minimized to the point where when they played Michigan, you saw a lot of these third down sets on first or second down. Now, if I were to try to attack this defense, I think you have to do it on first and second downs. I think you have to do it when they're kind of playing a base defense. Last year, the teams that seemed to find the most success consistently against Alabama were either your Georgias, who just beat them on one-on-ones deep pretty consistently because there was only 1 high safety, or the Auburns and USFs, who were able to get yards by going no huddle, by moving the ball quickly, by keeping Alabama in this base set, limiting them from their pre-snap shifts and keeping them in those base coverages. This Alabama team is kind of fun to watch. They've got a lot of talent all across the board, and their schemes offensively and defensively are very interesting. I think Kalen DeBoer has one of the most unique offenses in the country, and it's really fascinating to watch. I kept sitting there looking at plays thinking, what is this passing concept? What are they trying to do here? Why are they using this formation? And I think he does a really good job of kind of varying up his looks. It kind of reminds me of Chris Peterson back in his Washington days, who really didn't have a set playbook, but just said he had a list of plays and he threw them all at the wall. That kind of feels like how Kalen DeBoer throws his offenses together, and for the most part, it really works. But there have been times where it doesn't quite gel, and things can look kind of frustrating as plays don't necessarily build off of each other cleanly. Their defense is extremely talented, and while they keep things pretty simple for their defenders, it can kind of give quarterbacks a lot to think about and give some good challenges to the offense. I think realistically this can be a very good football team. And I think it's a team that if Florida State wants a chance of beating, they've got to punch them in the mouth early and keep them on their heels. And that's something I don't necessarily see as being terribly likely, but this is week 1 of college football, and honestly, anything can happen. Thanks for watching. Like I said before, this film was a lot of fun to watch through. If you're an Alabama fan, please like and subscribe, share this video with others, and potentially keep watching. I try to make these videos approachable for fans of any sort of fan base. And if you're a Florida State fan, please follow me over to Knowles247. Well, I'll post both these pictures of all of the different breakdowns that I do, and I'll further the conversation with Coach AB, Trey, and we'll be there for an instant reaction and for a breakdown of this game play by play. So thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you guys next time.